Cool. Hi, how's it going? Yeah, I'm excited to chat with you today a little bit about the work we've done with hundreds of different Insight Fellows who've gone through our program, who've done like product from idea, conception, all the way to like launching it out there into the world, and then also hundreds of companies that have worked with us on free consulting work, the kinds of problems that they're struggling with. And so kind of coming from two different angles, people that are trying to like make this very general for lots of different audiences that might be here today. So on one side, coming from the like data science, machine learning, engineering side, how do I make sure that I can develop the right projects and the right ideas to be tackling like what makes sense at the company for like company growth, like what stage we're at, where we're going, and make sure that that lines up together. And then on the flip side, the people who are business and product leaders trying to think like, okay, well, how do I make sure that I'm building the right stuff, getting the right data, and then trying to get the right team to build this together. So coming from both angles. This is meant to be like a workshop. I didn't see any other workshops at the conference, so I'm not exactly sure how that'll go, but I say if you just want to interrupt me with questions, we can do things. I did add a little interactive session in the middle where we can jump in and like talk with your neighbors. So just be prepared about maybe a third, half the way through, you're gonna have to talk to the people next to you and like maybe like jot some bullet points down and maybe we can talk about that. And then we can do some more stuff if you guys want. So yeah, as I mentioned, I'm Director of Product for AI here in the Bay Area, Insights in multiple different cities. I started out doing like math, cognitive science, and robotics. Then I did some work automating claims processing in the government. Then I spent my PhD work doing computational cognitive science, where I worked on trying to understand human decision making. Then I found my way into a position where I was doing machine learning and deep learning on audio and video data to study dolphin behavior. So that's an interesting story if you want to talk later. Then I joined Insight about 3 years ago, was leading their data science program, and then eventually launched and grew the AI program there, and then launched and grew the data product management program there. And now, as was mentioned, sort of spend my time thinking about the next things, how we're building stuff, how the fellows are building stuff, and then leading a lot of internal analytics for our own business for growth. So briefly, I think there's probably no information about my talk in the app, so I want to very quickly give you an overview of what's going on here. So I'm going to very quickly go over very rough intro to AI, give you some context for the Insight program and all the different projects and products that are going through the program with companies and fellows, and then walk through a lot of the advice that we give fellows in the program about how to think about designing what you're going to work on from data scientists coming into the program. But also these are the very similar kinds of conversations that we have with companies about they come to us and we're working through like, okay, what stage are they at? What are they working on? What are the most important pieces? And how do we design data, ML, and AI projects around that? And then talking a little bit more about how we've seen data teams at different companies, how we think about how we organize our own efforts internally and organize our teams. Would love to chat with people either during the session or after about how you guys do this. I've chatted with a few of you before this and it sounds sort of in line with your experience, but always down to hear more. Anatomy of ML projects, thinking through from both the company and data scientist side of things, and then some recent stuff that we've been doing and incorporating into our programs about doing more like lean AI or agile AI and trying to sort of like deliver on ML much faster, which I think every company is sort of wanting to do. So as you all know, with more and more GPUs and more compute power, obviously the trends in machine learning and deep learning have accelerated. There's a lot more jobs in the last 20 years. That also includes many different startups that are, there's a lot more funding going into either corporate VCs funding stuff or traditional VCs funding a lot more companies, and the money is going there. So hot topic, lots of people are diving into this, as you know. And this also includes a lot of different acquisitions over the last many years. Either people buying up whole groups of people because they want the talent, or buying up whole groups of people because they want to incorporate those products or features into their own offerings. I think in the early days, a lot of this was people were building their own ML platforms and their own ML infrastructure as a company, and then those companies were very quickly bought up by lots of large companies. For the most part, we've seen a lot of that die down, and a lot of people have been spending their time acquiring talent and teams for like specific features or specific product offerings. So what do we mean about applied AI? So I think this is sort of what you sort of hear in the news. You have like Facebook feed. This was a couple years ago, and like, hey, all the robots are inventing their own language. We have to shut things down. They're all talking to each other. Like they're going to take over the world. Things are crazy. Probably not necessarily the case. And then on the other hand, you have sort of this more open AI type setup where you have like this environment where you have like wiggly objects that are trying to slowly learn to walk, which like is very great for like learning a lot of these algorithms and doing core early research, but doesn't necessarily lend itself to like actually things that are being put into real companies. So what we talk about applied AI, at least at Insight and with our mentor companies, is more of this trying to encapsulate what it means to have some human capability, or trying to capture what it is to be a person that is doing this activity. So for instance, here are 3 examples. The one on the top left is Tala. They're a chatbot platform that interacts as if it's an HR, IT person. So the whole idea is like, how do you capture the interactions and activity pattern of someone in that position? The next one is a company that with a click of a button, you put your information about your house, some information about like where it is and different features, and they will offer you on the spot, like, this is how much we're going to pay you for your house. And so that's sort of like if you were an agent in a real estate company and you have all the different information you need, how can I automate that thing for you and take that process into algorithm? And then the bottom, really trying to capture this like human level capability. If you have an embedded system where you're putting computer vision or different technologies inside of a device, how do I actually build that actual core piece? And I think this is an even harder challenge, because then once you get into embedded devices and like hardware and like low level code, then it becomes much harder to do some of the higher level, more researchy, deep learning, machine learning stuff. Cool. So I think also, just given the the widespread use of AI as a term, I think we think about it in terms of capturing what it means to be a person that has this ability, but that has then slowly shifted into, well, all machine learning is like now AI, and anytime you're just doing some very specific ML task, it's now like AI powering these different things. So we sort of see it in 2 ways, like yes and no. Like if you're just automating some very specific model, maybe not. But if it's like trying to capture something about what a person at your company is actually doing day to day, and you want to automate that human effort, then like, yeah, maybe sure, that's like an AI effort that you would have in different parts of your company life cycle. So here are 2 examples. Lattice is a company that has a bunch of different products. There's a few Lattices out there, but this one, like for instance, automated lead scoring. So the first couple companies were like sort of like, we're actually building the company around this core AI type thing, and then these are like pieces that every single company needs. Like if you're going to go out and find new customers, if you're going to go out and find people who are users, I have to find some way to automate that process when we grow. And then on the other side, you have Salesforce, and they've built a lot of machine learning platform information and build a lot of ML and AI core pieces into their software to do things like sales predictions. And these are core things that all the different companies need, but they're not necessarily what an entire company is about, although the case could be made that there are different people that can enter this space, build this very specific product, and then either get acquired or like become a company on their own. So there's a very quick run through how we think about applied AI in a lot of our projects. And a lot of the companies that we chat with as well. So some quick context for about more of these. So as I mentioned, I worked at Insight. We started in 2012. We're a free program. It's 7 weeks long. People come into the program and build a project for 4 weeks. I think we have about, so fellows are data scientists, data engineers, ML engineers, data PMs at a bunch of different companies in Silicon Valley, New York, Boston, Seattle, Toronto, and so forth. We have 1,600 alumni in many of these different companies. Many of them are leading teams. I think, for instance, many of you probably saw Eric Colson's talk today. About a quarter to a third of Stitch Fix early data science team were all Insight data science fellows. The person who leads their AI division at Stitch Fix is an Insight alum. And so we have a lot of these people in industry that we've been working with over the many years who've taken these roles and talked to us about how they're developing and building their projects and products as well in their companies. So briefly, as I mentioned, we started out just as data science, as this big, giant, amorphous term. And I'll come to these divisions again later. But now it's broken down into data science, data engineering, health data science, artificial intelligence, data product management, DevOps engineering. And so a lot of the different core pieces of a data team itself. And we're in multiple different locations now: Seattle, San Francisco, Toronto, Boston, New York. And we have a remote program for people who are entering jobs in different places. So the core of the program, and why I'm mentioning this, is fellows come in, they work on a 4-week project. For the most part, they're using company data. So we have partnerships with Y Combinator and many other different VCs where you have a company, they have a lot of data, they have a thing that they want to try to build, and they don't necessarily have a data team. And so we'll work with them on real-world data and go from like an idea all the way to implementation and getting it out there. Oftentimes, then people use that to raise more funds and so forth. This could, in the AI program, be in computer vision, natural language processing, various other things, or those other very company-specific tasks that I was mentioning, like lead generation stuff, or routing particular calls in call centers in different ways, or doing other very specific company-agnostic tasks as well. So some examples really quickly. On the top left, you see someone who is doing a fashion classifier and trying to automatically generate tags for fashion. And just like in the last talk, you can sort of backtrack that and see which features in the images give you those specific predictions, and built this from scratch in like 3 weeks, made it live in production, and then auto-scaling and so forth. And now they integrated that into the company's pipeline that he was working with, and that was immediately changing to their entire company. They went from like not really having something to like having a core business. Some other interesting ones: automatically generating reviews in Yelp. If anyone works at Yelp, sorry, people are doing this all the time. Other projects like automatically identifying text in images and videos so that you can use this for a variety of functions, whether someone is visually impaired and wants to just automatically generate text in the world around them, or automatically understand what kind of advertisement is being done on different videos. And then diving into some other things with like deep learning diagnosis, heart disease diagnosis with deep learning. As I mentioned, company agnostic stuff, support request classification, and then doing some other things that are like more recent, just coming out of conferences, like taking deep learning and using it to reconstruct high frequency in audio, to do like downsampling of audio and so forth. So some of these are actually like, the whole point that we try to do in the program is a lot of these are often deep learning or machine learning research that's being happened in research labs in universities or at top conferences. And the problem is, maybe many of you, if you interview a lot of those people, what ends up happening is they're really, really good with the machine learning and deep learning on very specific handcrafted data sets that don't quite match reality. And so what we try to do is take those projects and very quickly turn them into something that uses real world data, that's like sort of stress tested in various ways that companies would see that, and like make software modules that people could use. So for instance, in the deep learning for high resolution audio, someone put it out there as a paper. We implemented it, got it out there, open source, and then like the creators of the paper had to be like, oh, hold up, we're also implementing it as well. And so that's another thing that we're trying to do, is just make the research that's sort of hidden to people, where you can't actually get the code, and like try to get it out there so everyone can use it. So there's some context for you of like how many different, we have hundreds of projects going at a time, 3 times a year: January, June, and September. And so a lot of projects are coming through over and over, and so it's really exciting to sort of capture for you. A lot of the stuff I put in this talk, I haven't actually talked at a conference before, so I'm excited to take some of these ideas and advice that we give with fellows for like hundreds of fellows to give to you and distill that. So this is sort of a distillation of helping people think about what is the sort of design space for different data products and industry. So I'm going to quickly go through like the types of companies, stages of companies, users, the data and models and techniques that they would have. And specifically, so I mentioned we have the data science and AI program, and we also have the data product management program. They're kind of coming from two different sides. I'd say like the business and product people that we end up taking to the program and we talk with are very much like aware of like, oh, this is this kind of company, this is the stage that we're at, these are all the users that we're building for, I'm making these things. I know the specific pieces I have to build to get the most impact in the company. Whereas a lot of the people coming from the other direction, either in academia or they're machine learning engineers or software engineers in different places, have a sense of the data and the models and the potential of things they could build, but aren't necessarily talking to each other in the right way. And so a lot of the work, let's see, I don't have a cursor. A lot of the work that we do in the data product management program is try to give the skills and ambition, or skills and intuition for the data and models. And then on the flip side, the data science and AI program try to give a sense of like what it means to be in a company, in a specific business, and be building for that. So very quickly, just because I'm trying to figure out the audience, I would say like a couple different very quick business ideas. You can have business-to-business companies where, you know, Lattice is a company that does stuff for HR. Salesforce is a thing that can sell you a whole piece of software that you use for your business for sales. And then business to consumer, you know, Spotify is making their product for very specific users who want to use, you know, listen to music. Nextdoor is building it for people in neighborhoods to interact with each other. And then a more complicated dynamic of, you know, marketplaces with like Uber, you have drivers and you have riders, same with Lyft, and then eBay, you have buyers and sellers, and trying to capture those dynamics. Obviously, this doesn't capture all the possible business models that are out there. You have companies that you sell to specific people at companies who buy the software, and then other people at the company that use it, or you have very specific software that you build and people use it for free, and maybe you grab their data and you use it for a different purpose. And so just going to put these ideas out there. I'm mentioning all this because this is very opaque and not clear to people coming into companies. And so when they start talking about all the data work that they could be doing, it's often usually the case they don't even know what kind of business you are and what kind of stuff you're doing. And so the first thing to do is sort of get them up to speed on that. In terms of stage of company, everyone has very different classifications of how this goes, and I feel like the real world, it's going to fall out in different ways. But if you go from like C to Series A, Series B, Series C, some sources kind of have like roughly the company challenge is thinking through the market research and business plan, and then trying to find product market fit, increase revenue. Series B trying to scale things up. And then Series C, like expand, acquire, build new products, optimize things. I believe most academics would probably come and say like, every company is like a Series C company because they know like Google, Facebook, Twitter, all these really large companies where all they want to do is like build machine learning and deep learning models to optimize some very specific piece of a later stage company. And a lot of the education that we have to try to provide for people coming into this field is how to get educated on like, well, what kinds of different companies are there, and then what stage they're at, and like what is the most exciting thing for you to build. This also helps on the flip side. If you are talking to people that you're trying to get to join the team, they may not understand any of this information. So just getting a sense of like where you are in your process, what kind of company you are, help them understand a little bit more where the exciting pieces are, where they can join the team and really do something that impacts where you're going. On a very similar note, you could have a lot of the people we've talked to in the data product management space kind of jump back and forth between being PMs, being founders. This happens a lot in various ways. And the challenges are very similar. So you would prototype something, introduce it to the market, try to get that fit, grow that product into something that's viable and people are using it. And then you have a very mature product that you have to like sort of keep the market segment there, keep people engaged, and keep trying to grow it. Yeah. So maybe first I'll just stop and see if there are any questions, because I guess this is supposed to be a workshop. So happy to like answer any questions first if you have any, and then we can dive into more stuff. Does this capture what you all sort of know about different? First of all, who is a data scientist? Great, this is exactly what I expected. Cool, who's like a software engineer? Great, who's like a product or business leader? Great, cool, awesome. So this is like a great mesh of multiple people. This will be good for later. Would you, I'm going to give it hands. Does this sort of capture your understanding of like where you are from each direction? So the data scientists and software engineers, is this sort of new to you? That's great. Okay, that's also good. And then people on the product and business from the data side? Good. Okay, cool. I'm matching reality. That's great. So what I wanted to do was then also think through some exercises that we try to have people do in early parts of our program, but is sort of one of the more critical pieces of trying to build the right thing. So when I've talked with different PMs that lead entire divisions at companies building machine learning platforms, so for instance, the PM who built Michelangelo, the ML platform at Uber that all of their employees use to build machine learning models, he said the number one core thing that he tries to get people to understand is when you're building the software and when you're doing this data work, you have to understand like what the business needs are, what the users' needs are, and then you can get like really skilled, amazing data scientists and engineers. So thinking through like who is the user, what is their problem, what are the current solutions to that problem, what is lacking from those solutions, what functionality do you want to provide, and how will you know they're successful. And so I mentioned you'll have to chat with your neighbors. What I thought would be interesting is if we thought about a case study, for instance, with Kickstarter, think through some of these questions with some of your neighbors. I would say people coming from academia, this is a very common kind of problem they want to do. They don't understand the kinds of problems that industry has. They think of a platform like Kickstarter, which they know. They're like, oh, what's like a really cool thing that I could build in that space? There are many different things for many different reasons and many different types of users. But that's not necessarily a data product design space they're used to experimenting in. So maybe, since this is supposed to be a little bit more active, take like 5 minutes and talk with your neighbors. You're all coming from different backgrounds. You showed your hands. You have some like data science, software engineers, and business and product leaders. Maybe quickly introduce yourselves and think about Kickstarter as a platform. What are the kinds of issues that you see and the solutions you could do and so forth. So.